Yes, that didn't happen automatically. We'll
Do
start that
do we
again.
need to share on Twitter and all that too? Did we already do that?
I did a share
Let
on
me
Twitter.
Okay, let me make
Yeah,
sure I
so I think we're
repost right
actually
now.
live now. I'm not sure. This is my first stream, guys, so I apologize for the technical delays and the time zone delays and everything else that we had going on here. But we're here, the first ever live stream for the greatest podcast in the multiverse with Zach Diamanti. Zach, thank
Whoop,
you so
whoop.
much for being here.
Dude, Herman, I'm so glad to be here, man. Like, isn't it funny to think back? Like, we met each other last year
Yeah,
at 20 Bucks Vegas, right? And it's been, gosh, since then, what was that, November? So a little over half a year. And man, we've had a lot going on in the last half year, haven't we?
it's been wild. There's been so much going on. I'll take that opportunity as a nice segue into the sponsor for the first live stream, and that is it's my first sponsor ever, but it's also me. Woo!
Whoop, whoop.
So I do have a Kickstarter going on right now for my special edition of the
Look at
Bartender
that
Between Worlds,
beauty.
and it's the gold foil jacket edition. Happening right now. If you're
Glorious.
watching this live or shortly thereafter, it'll be running into the month of June for a few weeks yet. So check that out if you have not already. Um, color
Yes.
illustrations. It's a cozy fantasy story about a witch hunter who decides to retire and become a bartender after she realizes she has magic of her own. So it's a fun story, and I hope you all will check it out. But that's all I really want to talk about that today because we are here to talk with Zach about his upcoming books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so Zach, for those people who may not know who you are, can you just give us a little bit of a quick rundown of about you and your writing history?
Yeah, sure, sure. If you guys don't know who I am, I go by ZS Diamanti as my pen name, but it does stand for Zach, so you guys can call me Zach. It's whatever. But I'm the author of the Stone and Sky series, which is a classic style epic fantasy adventure series. I often tell people it's like the books that you remember reading, like the ones you used to borrow from the library, right? And
Yeah.
so the first book is Stone and Sky, which looks like this. Big epic griffins and griffin guardians riding on, griffins into battle against wyvern riding orcs, which we have on the second cover, Stone and Tide, which is super
Yeah.
fun. And then, of course, you got elves that ride Pegasi. And then we've got the dwarves ride these things called Garvox, which are basically like panthers. With bat-like wings, and they have to bond with them magically, and super fun. Anyways,
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's all
that's
great.
what I write, or at least that's what I am or have been writing. Stone and Ruin actually comes out June 4th, which is crazy. 1 week from today,
One
believe it or
week.
not, which is crazy. Uh, but today we were packing up pre-order. We were packing up pre-order signed editions, so I was actually in the other room signing books when I got the message, and I was like, "Oh man, I gotta go."
Yeah.
So,
Well, hey, you made it, and it's all good. I do want to give a shout out to Mike Porter in the comment section here, just
yeah,
because he says he can see us, so that's great. I don't have StreamYard, guys, so this
epic.
is a new setup for me. I can't pull in the comments. I was telling Z before we started here, I can't pull in comments like you can with StreamYard, so
Yeah.
it might be an option Riverside needs to figure out if they want to be in the live streaming
But
game. I
we've
don't.
got it on the side there,
We've
so you
got it.
could check it out.
Then
So
we'll
if you do
figure it all
comment,
out.
we'll see you.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So Zach, you've got a lot. You've had a lot going on this last year. Um, how when did Stone and Sky first come out?
Yeah, so Stone and Sky came out August 29th of this past year.
Of
So
2023. So not even
yeah,
a year.
yeah, it's been out 7, 8. What are we going on? Maybe 9 months now.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. And
So
already book three is coming out, and you've got the trilogy all wrapped up. That is
yeah,
wild.
it is wild to like have a trilogy that's done. We sent out arcs a couple of weeks ago for Stone and Ruin, and the arc team, obviously they've read all the books, and we've been hearing back from several of them over the last day or two
Yeah.
that they're finishing the book, and there's a lot of tears, I guess. People are getting mad because they're crying at work on their break, and
Mm.
and I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't I didn't know you were gonna read it at work. Um, you know,
Yeah,
kind of thing. So it's been, dude, it's absolutely wild, to have a completed series, right? A completed trilogy, and
yeah,
I mean, it's gonna be done. It's gonna be out there next week, and so
that's
it's really exciting. It's kind of changing the way like I'm processing everything now.
yeah. I was
Um,
gonna ask you, like, what does that feel like for you? Like, I mean, this is your third book, but it's the series is done now. This is it for that trilogy. How does that feel?
yeah, I tell you what, writing it, it was hard, bro.
Yeah, I believe it.
I was like, oh my gosh, I spent all this time with these characters and,
Hmm.
this adventure, and now I've got to like wrap it up and close this. This is tough, man, because
Yeah,
you don't you've grown attached to these characters. You've been through some stuff with them, and now you kind of have to wrap this thing up and let them go on with life without you, and it's kind of weird. It was
yeah,
a weird experience, but like having the trilogy done and knowing that I'm revisiting the world. The world of Finlestia has just begun, right? The
right.
trilogy is over, but the world is so much bigger than just the trilogy, and so I
Yeah,
know that we're going back there, so I'm not too worried about that
cool,
part.
nice.
So it's easier to say goodbye to these guys when I know, we're gonna go and have other adventures. I'll see you guys later,
Yeah,
right?
you're
Kind of.
still in that world. That's
Yeah.
great. So, you already have other books planned then in this world. It's not that this trilogy is done and the world is over.
Yeah, no, this trilogy is done. Complete story. If you read it, from cover to cover, every book in this trilogy, you got a complete story is done, right?
Hmm.
But we do have, other stories to tell in the world,
Cool.
and one's already done.
Yeah,
One's already written. It's already in its final round of edits, which is awesome. I'm
that's
really
cool.
excited about that one. I can't really say too much about it yet. We're gonna do some revealing of some
Okay.
things here in a few weeks, but it's not quite there. We're not quite there.
No worries.
We're giving Stone and Ruin its limelight for
Yeah, yeah,
that.
we will. Yeah,
uh,
we'll save that for
uh,
another interview.
yeah, I'm really excited about that one, and I know, I've already got we've got a few other trilogies, and a few other series that are kind of planned already in the world, and so one of them's pretty kind of loosely plotted already, which is great.
Well,
It's pretty developed for a trilogy, and
wow,
that one will start getting some real attention later on this year, and then
that's wild.
obviously
That
we'll,
is so wild.
yeah.
When did you so how long did since you started? I know we talked about this a little bit in our previous episode, but when did you
Yeah.
actually start writing Stone and Sky? Like how long has it that been for you?
Yeah, so Stone and Sky started a few years back. Gosh, I want to say at least 3 years ago, I started Stone and Sky. Before I was
Okay.
writing, short form stuff like, horror short stories, and sci-fi short stories, and all sorts of fun short pieces. I even sold poetry, which was crazy cool.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, so like, I was doing all the short form stuff, and then Stone and Sky was really my first like dip into a full length novel, and
Cool.
yeah, and it just like many first time authors, like novelists, it takes us a couple of years to figure out what we're doing
Yeah.
with
Right.
with a novel, right? So yeah, that one took a few years, and then Stone and Tide actually only took about 3 months for me to write, and that's not talking about like, edits. That, once you get
For
into edit
sure.
phase and edit mode, that takes a couple of months to go through all that stuff.
Yeah.
That was just drafting and revisions before
Okay.
editing.
Okay.
And then Stone and Rune was about the same. It was about it was 2 months of active writing, three
Okay.
months of total writing because I was sick for like a month right in the middle of
Mm,
writing
oh
it,
wow.
which was ridiculous. And then now the book that I've that's already in final edits right now. That one took me like a month and a half. It's a little shorter,
Okay.
so it came together quicker, right? So
Yeah, yeah, but still, I mean that is quite prolific, especially for your first series. And I mean, Mike is pointing out here in the comments that he is curious what made you do seven short stories, because you haven't even talked about that. You've done
yeah,
these novels, but you also have a bunch of short stories that you've put into a compilation as well. So
yeah, that's
what was the reasoning behind that? And
yeah, that's
where do
great.
they fit in the series? I guess too is a great question too.
Yeah, sure. I have this great copy right here, which is
Cool.
easy for me to use as an example. Um, but so what happened was, as an author, as a new author, you're trying to figure out, like, okay, like I've written this book. Now, what the heck do I do with it? Like, how do I sell a book, right? So you got to go and learn these different things. And I kept hearing this thing about have a reader magnet, have a reader magnet, have a reader magnet, so that you can get people to join you on this adventure, join you on this quest by joining your readers list, right? And
Hmm.
you want a reader magnet, give them something to get them excited to be a part of it, right? And so for me, it made, like, I had just finished finished Stone and Sky, and it was like, man, like I really like these characters, like, and I wish I had more time with them. Like I wish we had
Hmm.
more page time with them. And so it kind of came about where I was like, you know what? I could make like a whole series of preludes about some of these characters, because these are all characters I would love to see more of. And that's kind of what happened with it. And so I started writing these, and then I got the idea of, what if I wrote these as what was happening right before you meet them in Stone and Sky.
Okay.
So, like, for example, Merrick and Rora, their story happens. I have a little thing that says read before chapter one in Stone and Sky.
Okay.
Uh, and Merrick is a hunter, a huntsman, and he's a falconer. A really cool character, right? Then you got like Kaylor, right? And Kaylor is an elf knight who works for basically the worst king ever. And and his story is, you read before chapter 5 of Stone and Sky,
Hmm.
because that's when you're going to meet Kaylor in Stone and Sky, right?
Yeah, right.
You flip back to, let's see, Rallowin, right? Rallowin is a elvish mage, and hers is read before chapter 13 of Stone and Sky. So that's the chapter that she will appear in Stone and Sky, right?
Right.
And so it's really cool. A lot of people have actually read these. A lot of people read the Preludes collection, because I give them away for free, right?
Yeah.
Um, Sign up for my readers list. I'll give you to meet all these new characters before you even get into the world. Super great place to start, right? And so a lot of people read them before they even got to the book, right? Before they even got to Stone and Sky. And so they read them and they're like, oh my gosh, I love these characters, and they're so excited. But when you get them from my newsletter, it doesn't tell you what chapter they're going to appear in.
Okay.
So a lot of people read them and didn't know what chapter these characters were going to
Nice.
appear in.
Yeah.
And then they kind of find them and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like running into an old friend. Like,
That's great.
I got that so many times. And some people read it like with as a companion with Stone and Sky, and
Cool.
they
Yeah.
read it like in
Concurrently.
chronological
Yeah.
order, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's so neat to, like, oh, who's this new character that I'm about to meet, and they get to read it there. And I've had people
Yeah.
tell me that they loved reading it after, because it was like, I wanted more time with these characters anyways, this is
Right. Just
great.
like you did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's how I experienced it, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what the basis was. Is I realized I wanted more time with those characters, and I needed something like a reader magnet. And then it turned into 7 stories. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, you know what? I could almost compile these into a collection. And
Hmm.
sure enough, we did. And people were so excited that we did that, because it was a total surprise. Um, that we
Yeah.
ended up compiling it into a collection, right
That's
at the
cool.
end, right before Stone and Sky came out. So
Yeah.
it
Right.
was pretty funny.
No, that's awesome. And what a great way to let your readers spend more time with your characters and get to know the characters a little bit more, and really, get invested in the story with them, because you do have, I mean, you do have a lot of characters in Stone and Sky.
Totally.
And it's, great to have this little extra where people are able to just yeah, get to know them a little bit better.
Right. Yeah, and it's a epic fantasy, right? It's a
Mhm.
classic style epic fantasy. So you got all sorts of moving parts with all sorts of different characters and POVs, and so it's fun to get to, meet these characters like in a
Right.
different way, right? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about your process. Like so Stone and Sky was your first book,
Hmm.
and now you've written. I mean, you've written four books, but we'll stick to just to Stone and Ruin.
Yeah, right, right.
So what was the process like for you writing Stone and Ruin versus writing Stone and Sky? Like, did your
Yeah.
process change at all sitting down to actually write that story?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Because um, timeline wise, what I'm kind of one of those people. Once I've done it once, I should know how to do this thing,
Okay.
right? And so one of the things that I learned while I was writing Stone and Sky was. I thought I was kind of a pantser, just going with the flow, going on this adventure, just having fun, meeting characters as we go. And of course, I still do that, while I write.
Hmm.
But what I learned is I was creating this complex storyline that had to bring all of these different characters together at the same time.
Hmm.
And then I was like, oh, wait, what if, hang on, now I got to make sure I get my timing right. And then I had to start figuring out, okay, this chapter is going to be about these characters, and they got to get to this point at a certain point in time. But they also got to get there at the same time as these characters are going to get
Hmm.
there. And so I really kind of had to start plotting way markers for each chapter,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so I learned from that process, and because I had to go back and fix things after that, right?
Yeah.
Like, because now that I'm like, oh great, now I figured out the timing, now I got to kind of go and
And shift
adjust
things
and
around a little
fix and
bit.
make sure things work right. Well, with Stone and Tide, I was like, I'm not playing that game again. I was like, we're gonna go ahead and get this sorted out. Let's get those way markers set out ahead of us. Let's go
Nice.
get those way markers, and it'll be way better. And honestly, I talk about it like a sandbox, right?
Hmm.
A sandbox is a sandbox, and it's fun because it has railings. It contains all the sand in there, and it makes a play place for you to play with.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas, like, if there's no railings, you're just in the desert, right? So it was like, okay, give myself some railings here to help guide me along and give me some way markers, and and we still get to play and have fun. I
Yeah. Right.
still don't have, like, if I go, they're gonna meet some character in this chapter that's gonna convince them to do this, right? I, half the time I don't even know what that character's name is going to be until we get there.
Right.
Half the time I don't know if he's going to be a halfling, an elf, or like a dwarf.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll just see when we get there. Like, I'm going to meet him when we get there. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
that part is fun for me still, right? Like, I still
For
get to
sure.
go and experience the adventure, uh, even though there are way
You've
markers
got
that
some
we're like,
guidelines.
yeah, we got to try and hit there, but we still get to have fun with it.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's a great way to do it. Yeah, because you've still got a destination in mind as you're writing, so you're not going
Hmm.
way off into the weeds and ending up having to scrap words and come back to it after, right?
Yeah,
Um,
right, right.
so how do you because you do write in multiple POV,
Yeah.
are you when you're writing, are you writing in the order of the story, or are you following a certain point of view until it's to that one of those waypoints and then you go to a different character? How do you approach that?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was talking with another author. His name is Rob Lee.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah,
he's
Rob
one of
was
the
on.
break-ins.
Yeah, he was on the show. We had him on a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
weeks
yeah.
ago. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And author of Pathlighter. You guys have seen him then. And he and I were chatting about this the other day, because he's kind of making some adjustments going into the second book, and
Mm.
and there is this kind of difficult thing as you wade through a second book in a series, right? And you're trying to figure, like, you were able to tell a totally different story in the first one, but now you've got to build on everything, and it can't be the same. Like,
Yeah.
you get it.
Yeah.
And there's this tough, interesting thing, but he's moving into some more multi POV stuff, and
Hmm.
we were kind of talking about how, like, for me, there is this there's this psychological thing for all authors. There is a scene in the book that we want to write the most.
Right.
There is that scene that we all want to write. We all know it, and the hard part is you want to write that scene, but you still have all these other scenes that you got to write to get
you've
there.
got to get there first, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this really difficult tension, and you feel like everything you're writing sucks because it's like not that scene that you're wanting to write. Like
Yeah,
that
right.
scene's gonna be so good. All the rest of this is just garbage, you know. Like, but we were talking about. I was like, dude, just write straight through chronologically. Just power through it. If you feel like it's garbage, just next chapter, here we go, keep going. That's what revisions are for. You're going to go
Yeah,
back,
right.
and once you hit that climax, once you hit the climax and then you hit the end, you're like, dude, you're on a high, man. You're like coming off of that, like, yes, these are huge milestones. Like you hit the climax, you hit the end, and now you're going back all like pumped up, and you're reading it and you're like, actually, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. This
For
is
sure.
actually pretty good.
Yeah,
Like this
right.
actually mattered, and this was important, and this was important. And I actually did set up a lot of this. This is really good. Like, and so I love to write chronologically.
Cool.
Anybody who writes out of order, and or you have multi POVs and you write one through line all the way to the end, doesn't make sense to me. I, I love to be able to end a chapter with like just like a little nugget where they're
Mm,
maybe they mention something about, I'm not this kind of person, and then the very next chapter is a character that as the reader is that kind of person, and you
right.
can do those kind of things so beautifully
For
when you
sure.
write it chronologically, whereas when you're writing separate stories, you're writing two different books.
Right. Yeah. No, that's cool though, because I mean when I wrote Chimera and Resurgence, I actually like I started writing chronologically, but I
Yeah,
was having a tough time with especially one character's story arc. And
yeah,
I had to start writing it. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna write this person's narrative,
yeah.
because I needed to get that sorted out. Um, and then I had to go back and do all those things. I had to weave it all together. So there was
Yeah,
I definitely understand where that the benefit is, where if you can write that cliffhanger of the chapter and then the
totally.
hook of the next chapter and keep that flow going, I definitely see
Oh
the
yeah,
benefit of
it's
that.
beautiful.
But yeah, I did struggle with that.
That's
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think that's where like way markers are really important. Obviously,
absolutely.
in the plotting process, way markers are super important for
Yeah.
me personally.
Hmm.
And if you have like specific way markers for chapter by chapter way markers is how I do it. I feel like that's super useful because I don't really get off track all that often. I do occasionally where I'm like, where did this character come from? What are you doing here? Who
Yeah.
are you? Who is this guy? Right?
Right.
You're like, you're just
Yeah.
coming in and interrupting everything. Great.
Right.
Now what are we gonna do at the end of this
Exactly. Yeah.
chapter? So it happens to me too, for sure. And then you
Yeah.
kind
And
of
that.
gotta like retrace your steps, and that's kind of where re-outlining and replotting kind of branches off as you go.
Yeah.
But
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
But like since you have those way markers, I think that's really smart, because then you're only diverting a little bit before you have to get back here. Whereas I think the problem I had was that my way marker was the end. I knew where everyone had to
yeah,
end up, but I had
right,
nothing laid out in between. So
totally,
so the
yeah,
story went way out to come back, and
right.
it ended up getting a bit too convoluted. So I think to your point, having those way markers closer together
Yeah, totally.
is
I
probably a
look at them
much
as
better
like mile
process.
markers for me, just like
Yeah.
I hey, it's going to tell me that's mile, 17, but okay, well, what am I going to see from mile 16 to mile 17? That's all fun, right? I just
Mhm.
know that I got to get to mile 17 cuz there's an exit that's going to take us to this next highway, right?
Yeah, for sure,
So,
for sure. So I wanna talk a little bit more about the world of Stone and Sky,
yeah.
especially the you have a number of different species in the books. I'd like to know, because you have a wide variety of them. Can you tell us a little bit about them and the dynamics that they play, because they do have a really interesting setup in the book.
Totally. Yeah. So one of the things for me when I was writing this, obviously, I was in the military. My dad was in the military. I spent my entire life around military aircraft, and so this concept. This is really where Stone and Sky was born. Was this concept of what if like all the different fantasy races had like their own different flying military, like
Mhm.
and and I was like, well, obviously the Griffin Guard would be the noblest and coolest, right? So
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's where it started. But then all of a
Cool.
sudden I was like, well, who are they going to fight? They're going to fight the wyvern riding orcs. And then
Yeah.
I was like, well, but they're kind of awesome too. And then I was like, okay, well, what are the elves going to ride? They're going to ride Pegasi, right? And
Mhm.
so I got really creative with all of that first. And then it came to, okay, now what could our story be like in a world like this, right?
Right.
And for me, I love um I kind of cut my teeth in horror,
Oh, really?
especially like creature features.
Okay.
So I love creatures and monsters and that
That
kind of
makes
stuff.
so much sense.
Super fun for me. Yeah, right. So super fun for me. So like if I could throw my my heroes into a lake where there's a creepy monster that uses telepathy to sing songs to them
Mhm.
and knock them out and try to eat them. That awesome. Let's go.
Yeah,
Like
right.
let me create all sorts of monsters and creatures, and that's why you'll see so many monsters and creatures throughout Stone and
Yeah.
Sky, and that's just my favorite thing.
That's cool.
That's where I come from, right? That's
I
what I
love
got
it.
to start with. Um, but with all these different militaries, we have to have different cultures and why these people like why would the orcs work with the wyverns? Why does their symbiosis there work? Like why are the humans able to bond with these griffins when centuries before the only ones doing any husbandry with griffins were the dwarves, right? And
Mhm.
like why are all these things working the way they do? Why do these creatures bond with the peoples they do? And so that was really fun, and just coming up with these really interesting ways that creatures and people interact uh, really lended to robust cultures,
Yeah, right.
right? In the book. And then of course I got crazy on myself. And Stone and Sky was this nice little uh, rectangular map
Mhm.
on the map of Turin. And
Yeah.
it was like, oh yeah, oh look, a nice fantasy map,
Mhm.
wonderful. And then I was like, you know what? But the sorcerer that comes in and he's trying to ruin everything in Turin, he's gonna be from across the sea. And
Right.
then now they're gonna have to go across the sea in book two. And then I was like, oh wait, now I gotta draw another map. And I was like, oh no, what am I doing to myself? And so the world grew and expanded, right? As
Right.
as you were as you go. And so book two, the map just explodes. Now it's now it's two full
That's
pages
awesome.
of
That's so
fantasy
cool.
map, right? And
Yeah.
and uh and it just got so big. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. The more I got to spend time with characters, the more I got to spend time in different places with different cultures, getting to hang out in Cal Rock by the sea with the orcs and how they live there. And you're like, cool. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's spend time here. And then, you go across the sea and there's these turtle like people. And it's
Mm,
just so fun to imagine all those
that's
things
awesome.
that you just can't help yourself.
Right. Yeah, and Mike is saying here that he loves world building and it makes him even more excited to get his copies of your books. So,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's lots of world building
yeah.
in this series, which again goes to the point of, well, this trilogy is done now, but this world is so big and vibrant and
Right.
multifaceted and so many different cultures and so many things to explore that it's like, oh dude, we can keep going. Let's
That's
go.
so
Like
awesome.
let's go have more different adventures.
Yeah, I mean, because you spent obviously all of this time creating this world, you want to play in it a bit more and, kind of continue different stories. There's
Yeah,
obviously so many stories that you could bring into a world like this, especially such an expansive world that you've
right.
introduced all of these different places and cultures and um, creatures and whatnot, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's with so many things. And you know, you've got, as an author, you've got other things that you've created in the world that nobody knows about,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah,
That
yeah.
you're like, oh, we can go and explore that. You guys don't know yet, but
For
it's
sure,
coming.
right? That's great. And you're probably now, do you drop little Easter eggs in these books that maybe don't mean anything to the reader yet, but once they get to a certain point that maybe they'll make a little more sense? Are there some of those?
Yeah, totally. Do that all the time.
Love it.
One of the things that I did while I was writing Stone and Ruin, I had a copy of Stone and Sky sitting on my desk the entire time.
Mm.
And I was hitting up little nuggets and things. I was like, I know I mentioned this at some point. Let's make sure I throw that
Love
little
it.
nugget in there,
Yeah,
throw
yeah.
this little nugget in there, get that one in there, like crazy, dude. Um, the fun thing for me is that because I have so many other books planned, and you know, I've got a crazy writing and releasing schedule over the next few years. We actually went through and like
You have it all
wrote
mapped
down,
out.
like mapped it out for the next few years, and it's like, dude, there's
Good
a
for you.
lot. But the funny thing is uh, I actually, you know, I love those little nuggets and Easter eggs. Who doesn't? They're
I love
so
those too.
satisfying, right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, I've got nuggets from the preludes that show up later in, you know, Stone and Ruin, or show up
Love
later
it.
in Stone and Tide, right? And but I've also got little nuggets for me for later. I have characters that talk about their past all the time, and people are like, they talk about these ridiculous things that happened in their past,
Hmm.
and I'm over here like, yep, that's gonna come back. You'll see. Don't
Right?
you worry, right? Or like I love to title my chapters, and like I write chapter titles that I'm like, that might be a book title later. Just throwing that out there, you know, like
That's cool.
different things like that that people won't notice now, but maybe in 5 years when all these books are out, they're like, hey, wait a minute, you know, like
Yep.
really cool deep cuts. I love that stuff. Who
That's
doesn't love
awesome.
that stuff?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's so cool. So how do you, I mean, how do you keep track of all that though? Do you have do you don't tell me you
That's a
have that
great
all in your
question.
head?
That is a good question. Okay, so I have this thing right here that's always floating next to me, which is what I just, it's my ghost, it's my mind bubble
All right.
that just has a gajillion things in it.
Wow.
And it is kind of a gajillion things. But when I write something like specific that I know is going to be like, hey, this is going to be another book thing,
Hmm.
I actually have a notebook that has like this book and this book, and it's all got notes
Nice.
underneath it,
Okay.
like, hey, don't forget this character's name is this, or hey, don't forget like this ancient character was mentioned, or when these guys talk about their past, they say that this happened this way, don't forget, because when you go back and you write it, you're going to want to be like, oh yeah, no, this is how it happened, but let's embellish it and show you how
Yeah.
crazy it was,
Yeah, right.
right? So yeah, I
Good.
definitely have a notebook that's just filled with notes.
Good.
And
And
not all of those things make it in, like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Sometimes
no,
it's just a
absolutely.
nugget and you're like, I love that,
Or you
and
look
then
at it,
later you're like, okay,
yeah.
whatever,
Or you
no big
look
deal.
at it 2 months later and you're like, what was I talking about? What was this?
Yeah, look at your notes like, what was I? Where was I going with this?
Been there. Been there for sure. Yeah, that's cool though. So yeah, like it always blows me away when authors tell me that they have everything in their head. I'm like,
Yeah,
how do you like
it's a
how
lot
do you
in
not
my head.
forget things? Yeah.
And when I write books so quickly, it's like, okay, hang on, things are gonna fall out if I don't actually write some of these down.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, it's kind of like, for example, this book that the new book that's coming out, no confirmed dates. I have a date coming in
Soon.
the next couple
Later.
of weeks,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to be. We're aiming at September, right, for this other book that's going to come out,
Yeah.
and it does take place in the world of Finlestia, which is super exciting. But it's a totally different vibe. It's a totally different. experience, because over here we got a classic style epic fantasy adventure,
Hmm.
and that book is a cozy fantasy. I'll just fill it like that.
Nice,
But
nice. Look at that.
it's
Dropped
gonna
it
be
here.
so much fun. Okay, like
Yeah.
it's so much fun, right? And it's funny because my wife read it and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like Virgin River meets The Hobbit." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, put that
There.
in your review. I'm quoting it.
Right.
It's perfect, right? Like that
Definitely.
is so good.
There
That's
are your comparables
exactly what I was
right
going for,
there.
right?"
Very cool.
And so there's this totally different vibe, totally different kind of story, but set in the same world. And so I could play with all these little nuggets and things from these books, but it's in a totally different way in this other book. But
Yeah.
if I like, sometimes you're like, I can't remember all that stuff. Good thing I have it in print. And you turn around and grab one from the shelf and look at it, and you're like, oh yeah, good, good, good. Okay, right. Because you can't remember everything,
You
man. You
can't.
just
You
can't.
really can't. No. That's cool. Well, there are 1,000 questions I could ask you about that, but I will save those questions because I know you have a row of announcements coming up on that.
Yes,
I do.
definitely.
Let's talk about something a little more. Oh, Daniel is here in the chat.
Hey, what's
That's
up, Daniel?
good to see you. Um, I do want to ask you about your Kickstarter campaign. So you've
Yeah.
run a Kickstarter campaign for each of your books now. Um,
Actually, only two of
only
them.
two. Okay. So you've
Yeah.
run two of them.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me then a little bit about why you decided to run them for the two that you did,
Sure. Yeah.
and what did that all look like for you?
Yeah. So, Kickstarter is just this amazing way for artists, in all the forms of art, right?
Hmm.
It's just a really incredible way for artists to get people behind them and wanting to be a part of what they're doing, right?
Right.
And you're excited and you want to create something super special and awesome, but it takes money to do those things, right? And so you're like, before I like go and kill myself trying to make this,
Mhm.
and like I already have $0, right? You're like,
Yeah. Right.
I'm already in the negative. I Before I go and try and kill myself and invest in this and like go crazy on this, like, is this even viable? I really want to make sure people are going to be there for me and want to be behind this.
Yeah.
So Kickstarters are amazing for that. I didn't have an audiobook. Stone and Sky, really, like most indie authors,
Yeah.
we like, you come out the gate, you've invested everything you got into just getting this thing out,
Yeah.
and so you don't have enough money for an audiobook. And so I really always in my vision was to do an audiobook, for Stone and Sky and for the whole series.
Yeah. Right.
And Kickstarter really seemed like the best option for me to try and make that happen.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so what I ended up doing was I did a Kickstarter for Stone and Sky, and attached to it was Stone and Tide, which came out in the middle of the Kickstarter.
Okay. Okay.
And so attached to it was Stone and Tide, and of course the Stone and Sky Preludes collection. But my main goal was that I get Stone and Sky, yeah,
The
audiobook
audiobook done.
produced, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so when I went about doing that, luckily I had a couple of books. So what happens is when people buy multiple books, it's compounding, right? So when you're going for $1,000 goal or whatever, when people buy three books versus one book, they're gonna give you the amount of money for three books rather than one book, and so you actually are able to hit your goals quicker than you expect,
For sure.
because you have multiple books out. And so what I ended up doing was I made the first stretch goal the audiobook version of the Preludes collection, and I made the second stretch goal the audiobook version of Stone and Tide, and it just worked
That's awesome.
gangbusters. It was wonderful. People were so excited. I was already working with the narrator. I was like, this is my guy. I'm gonna make this happen one way or the
Yeah.
other. But boy, it would be a lot easier if people were gonna back
Of
it,
course.
like
Of
if people were
course.
gonna be on board with this, right?
Yeah. Right.
And and so you're already doing the legwork. You're already doing all the things ahead of time to get it prepped and do. It's a lot of work to run a Kickstarter. A lot of people don't realize how much work actually goes into
So much
it.
work.
You know what I'm
So
talking
much
about?
work.
Like
Yes.
a lot of work goes into a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Um, and and it's great to see Kickstarters really succeed because as somebody who's run one, how much work goes into it, and you're like, oh,
Definitely.
good for go get
Yeah.
it, guy. Like you totally deserve
Exactly.
it. Like go get it. I know how hard that was, so
Yeah, right.
go get it.
It's like
And
writing another
so,
book, right? Like
dude,
putting
right?
together a
Yeah,
campaign is almost as much work as like writing another
you're
book. It's
not even
crazy.
playing. Every
Yeah.
time, so I've done a Kickstarter twice, and both times I was in the middle of the Kickstarter, like I got almost no writing done
I
because it
know.
was like working on the Kickstarter. So it's like
Yeah.
a job.
It is.
um,
It really is.
it really is. And so, like, I really wanted audiobooks, and so that's what the first Kickstarter was about.
Cool.
And so then we actually did just run a Kickstarter for Stone and Ruin. One of the special things that we did was signed hardcovers, which is something I don't normally do, right?
Yeah, right.
I do signed paperbacks on my website, which is super awesome. People love that. They love that they can get personalized signed paperbacks of all the books on the website. It's great. But
Hmm.
logistically, for us, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to try and do hardcovers as well.
Okay.
Um, just with our house and with keeping stock and with having to have different size boxes, logistically it's a nightmare, right?
For sure.
And so we're like, hey, with a Kickstarter, people will actually back the tier, and then we'll know what the number is,
Yeah.
and we order that many. And so it's not like trying to keep stock, and it's not like trying to keep 7 different types of boxes around. It's just
Absolutely.
mania, right?
Makes sense.
And
Yeah.
so that made a lot of sense, and we did that special for the Kickstarter. And then we realized, oh my gosh, everybody's going to want the third one to go with the collection, like with the collection.
Yeah,
So
right.
okay, we got to do another Kickstarter. We did a Kickstarter for Stone and Ruin, and we did some more fun things that we didn't get to do, like we did foil bookmarks and stuff.
Yeah,
Where
right.
I actually have them in the other room because we're getting a whole bunch of stuff ready to fulfill. But we also did these really epic like dust jackets for the series, because my hardcovers they've never had dust jackets, right?
That's so
And
cool. They
so
look so good too.
dude, thank you, man. Like,
Mhm.
so excited how they turned out.
Yeah.
Just thrilled. Like, they really turned out cool. But
Yeah.
we got to do that kind of stuff, and that's the thing with Kickstarter. You can
Hmm.
do fun things
Different
that you
things.
normally wouldn't do
Absolutely.
because like there's going to be a set number at the end, and you don't have to go crazy trying to guess. You don't have to do all this
Exactly.
guesswork,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the great things about it.
Yeah. Mike is asking in the comments, when is a good time to start doing a Kickstarter?
Well, I think different people will have different opinions on this one. For me, I like to run Kickstarters when everything's like done. Like I have everything done. So Stone and Ruin, it was already coming out June 4th. I had most of the things done. Some of the things like bookmarks and dust jackets and that stuff I didn't have done, of course. But like the book was done,
Yeah.
final edits were done. We were going, like, when the Kickstarter started, I think we were just wrapping up proofreads, that kind of stuff. Those things are done. So I like having most of that stuff already done because I know I can fulfill the promise
Yeah,
to backers, right?
definitely.
Now, some people think my window is pretty tight because we just finished the Kickstarter and now we're fulfilling it at the same time as all the pre-orders for Ruin. And my house is a warehouse right now.
Yeah, right.
I just
Yeah.
sent out an update and it was like, oh my gosh, our house is a warehouse. But guess what, guys? It's coming. Like, stuff is
Yeah.
almost, we're
So
getting
what
ready, right?
when did your last Kickstarter end? Like it was only a couple weeks ago, was it? Or was it?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Stone and Ruin, I think it ended on the 8th of,
of
oh my
May.
gosh. Yeah, like
Okay.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. So you gave
Yeah,
yourself, so you had a
yeah,
month window. So that's actually, I mean,
essentially.
that's about what I gave myself as well,
Yeah,
because
and it's a tight window.
yeah, my campaign ends on the 22nd of June,
Yeah,
and my launch is this 23rd of July.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. And so for us, we wanted to get it as close to release day as possible. Um, that way people can get it around release time because it's exciting.
Hmm.
That's when like it's brand new and you get to read it, right? Um, we wanted to get it to as close to that as possible, but one of the things that you got to remember is when you're doing something special. So like the dust jackets, for example, we I had to work with a local printer to get my dust jackets made
Oh wow.
because my books, I didn't have dust jackets for them at all
Hmm.
beforehand, right? So um, in order to do that, I had to do a bunch of design work, hit up a local printer. We had to do a couple of test prints to make sure that my designs were working right. And then I got to make adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I'm working with the local printer, but then I have to go through the surveys and make sure I know who all wanted to make sure they got got dust jackets and the add-ons. And then, you got to, now that the surveys have come in, okay, now we got to print all those, which is going to take time. And then we have to put them on all the books before we ship them, right? So
Yeah. Wow.
like there are a lot of added things that you like when you do the stretch goals. You really got to like really process out like, okay, what is feasible, because we don't do this normally, so we got to make sure we can accomplish this.
Yeah.
um,
Right.
and so like the hardcovers, our dust jackets, I think are going to be done printing like 2 days before or one day before the book actually releases on June 4th. And
Okay.
so the hardcovers, for the Kickstarter are going to go out. They're not going to be there for a release day. They'll be there, a few days after or something,
Yeah.
or at a week at the most, probably. Right. And so, but people who are backing you on a Kickstarter, if you have good communication with those people, most of them are like, no big deal, bro. Like a week later, okay, great. We got these epic dust jackets like we didn't know we were going to get. So this is awesome, right? So you
For
really
sure.
communicating with people is key when it comes to Kickstarter, and giving yourself more time than you expect is the wise decision.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. Daniel's asking here if you used a fulfillment agency.
Oh, okay. So I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Um,
Or yeah, I'm
yeah,
not either.
no, you're right. Yeah, yeah, you're still active, right?
Yeah.
You're still in the middle. Yeah. I did not. One of the things that I'm doing different this time is I'm using a shipping um, I'm using a shipping agency to print out all my labels and stuff, because
Okay.
in the last Kickstarter, in the previous Kickstarter, it was, we're writing all the addresses on sticky
Oh
notes
yeah.
and like taping and like all sorts
Wow.
of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, Whereas like my Shopify, my website shop, like I can print the labels directly,
Oh
like
wow. Okay.
my TikTok shop, I print the labels directly, like from them. And like, so that's once you get into that mode, you're like, I never want to have to write little sticky note addresses again,
Understandable.
especially after the last kicks, like the previous Kickstarter, and you're writing like 100 sticky notes, and then you're like cutting them and making sure
Yeah.
you tape them on there and stuff. Yeah, it's a little wild. So,
Yeah, that is
shipping, very good idea.
very good. Yeah.
Very much worth it, because think about it. Like we got 200 backers. I think it's like 170 something physical, like people that we got to send physical
That's a lot.
rewards to, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that's a lot of shipping labels, bro, right? Like,
And you'd like your kids and stuff helping you too, didn't you?
oh
Like,
yeah, bro. We
yeah.
have a whole we get a whole assembly line. Like I right now in the other room, I can hear them actually wrapping books like right now that I already signed, because like
Right. Yeah.
because I was sitting at the tables just signing books, signing,
Oh.
and here you go ahead and start packing, go ahead and start packing, right? There's just so many when you're doing a release, but
Yeah.
then you got all the pre-orders and all the Kickstarters all at the same time. It's mania, bro.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah. Oh, wow.
yeah.
I feel for you,
This
but
time around, I'm like, I wish I give myself just 2 more weeks at least
yeah.
to kind of get some things packed on several different days, right?
Yeah.
Instead, so
Yeah. Well, it's nice. It's nice that you do have some help at least. You can put your
totally,
kids
yeah,
to
yeah.
work.
All the
They're old
extra
enough
help,
to
yeah.
help a little bit, right?
They're rewarded.
Oh yeah, of course, right?
They're taken care of.
Room and board, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You want
That's what
new
I.
socks? You
That's
want not holy socks? There you go.
yeah.
You're
That's
done.
that's what I would have got as a kid for doing stuff
I
like that, right?
dude, right?
You get room and board. You get to live here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
so I'm curious though. What made you print the jackets through a different company
mm,
than actually printing the books? Because I'm getting, I mean, my dust jackets are done through. I'm getting mine printed through Bookvault. They'll do
yeah,
the
yeah.
case back and the dust jacket. Was there a reason why you had the dust jacket separate?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we had to do that is we'd actually didn't do dust jackets for the previous Kickstarter, and
Okay.
so up until the last 2 weeks, my hardcovers have
Ah.
never had dust
Okay.
jackets.
Okay.
And so one of the difficulties with that is trying to find a company to print just the dust jackets is
Yeah.
like impossible online. And like, great book funnel or book vault, excuse me, they're great, by the way. I love them. I can't praise them enough, by the way.
They
If
did
you
such a
guys aren't with
good
them,
job.
get with the program here. But um, I print actually all my hardcovers through them as well,
Oh, cool. Okay.
and so I could have them print the hardcovers, and now I can add dust jackets to them now. But the problem is I have all these backers from the previous Kickstarter who have all the hardcovers, and so I can't
Right.
just go and print, 100 something more hardcovers, uh, just to get the dust jackets. And it was like,
Yeah.
dude,
Right.
then I'll be paying like crazy amounts of money
Yeah.
just to get these dust jackets, which doesn't make any sense,
For
right?
sure.
So I had to go and actually find a local printer, and I hit up a couple of different local printers.
Okay.
One of them got back to me at a reasonable price. I actually
Nice.
talked, and this is one of my favorite things about the indie author community is if you got people, ask them, because
Yeah.
guess what? Somebody's done something that you're trying to do. I say that, but not everybody. I have run into a few things where people are coming back at me like, dude, what do you do? How did you do this? And I'm like, I I just figured it out, man. Here,
Yeah.
let me
Right.
tell you how, right? But that's the thing. Most of the time, there is somebody like an author friend or author around that you can ask and say, bro, like, where did you get these printed? What are you doing with this?
Hmm.
So my buddy SL Rowland, actually, you probably know him.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think you got
I've talked to him a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyways,
He might be coming on the show soon. So we're working on.
he's great. He's
Yeah,
great.
he's fantastic. Yeah, I've actually got
Uh,
his book sitting right here actually
yeah,
too.
I
So
know.
if
I
people
got I got a couple of
want to
his
check that
over
out,
here. I don't know if I
that's
can
all
reach
rolling.
them, but yeah, he does cozy fantasy and stuff as well, and lit
Mhm.
RPG. Anyways, point is, he did a special edition with like dust jackets, blah blah blah, and he was the one that said, "Have you checked any local printers?" Because I worked with a local printer here, and and he was gracious enough to tell me, hey, I was like, hey, how much are you paying per unit for those? And he was like, I was able to get it for about $1.50 per unit, blah, 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 which in turn gave me the opportunity to go to these local printers and say, hey, I've got a buddy who's out in St. Louis. So I know, it's not going to be outright the same price, but like if you guys can get close to this, like tell me what we can do. That kind of it gave me a little leverage there.
Yeah,
Like
right.
you can learn those things from other authors, and you can ask them. And I love that about the indie author community. But he was
Absolutely.
the one that said, "Hey, check some of your local printers." I was able to take that information with me and do that, and so I give him
Cool.
all sorts of praise. I love that guy though, so we're always messaging each other about different things. But
That's fantastic.
uh,
Yeah, and he
that's
writes, and he's a great writer
great.
too. So
Oh yeah,
people
yeah,
haven't checked out his
totally.
books do so. But
Super fun.
to that, and you helped me. I had, I wanted, I had some questions about my Kickstarter, and I reached out to
Yeah.
you, and I mean, you gave me some great feedback and answers. So, I mean, I
and,
really
and
appreciate it.
probably half of the stuff I gave you was probably half of the stuff Josiah Rizal gave me and Andy Pellegrin. Like
Yeah,
we're all learning from each other, and it's
exactly.
amazing.
That's how
And we
this
all
indie
have
author thing
something
goes,
different.
right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, but we all have something different to bring to the table
For
too.
sure,
And so
for sure.
it's just wonderful that we can do that, and when we can learn these things, and yeah, we might be running Kickstarters, but our Kickstarters are for something different, and it is different, right? It's
Yeah,
unique with each one, which I love.
exactly. Yeah, it's so much fun,
Yeah,
and it's so cool that indie authors um, bring so many different things to the table and so many different experiences,
totally.
and you can find answers like that, you know. And every indie author that I have talked to has been so willing to help out, which I mean,
Sure, yeah.
it's just fantastic, and that's why I love interviewing. You know,
Oh, I know,
people
I
like you
get it.
to get, you know, it's a lot of it's selfish because I get to learn things that I want to know how to do, or how
I'm
different
pretty
people work.
jealous. I'm not gonna lie. There are days that I go, man, I really gotta get this podcast thing going. Yeah, like I'm with
Yeah,
I get jealous.
let me know when you do. But yeah, you know, like it's
Uh,
yeah, there's so many. There's only so much time in a day, right? To do
totally right.
to
Yeah.
do things. So you got to pick.
I mean,
You got to
I'm
pick what's important.
packing 400 books, and then like I gotta go pack a whole bunch of books.
Yeah,
Like
right.
there's
Yeah,
only so much time.
I hear you. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's. I mean, that's probably a good place to segue and kind of wrap things up here because we are getting a little late, and I'll let you get back to that. But just
Yeah,
because we're live doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you this question. I know you
yeah,
answered it once already, but you know this is the greatest podcast in the multiverse. So can you tell us about how another decision in your life might have shaped another version of your life?
yeah, yeah. How about I'm gonna try and pick something different this
Yeah,
time.
please do. Please do.
Get creative with it. Um, so I quit my job a little over it's a year and a half now,
Mhm.
not quite 2 years ago, to pursue this, to just go full bore and be an author, right?
Yeah.
Um, I can see if I never uh, quit that job, the sad, very sad, and very tired Zach working and toiling away and coming home every night and wanting to cry to his wife every night
Yeah.
because he is not doing the thing that he is just so wired to do.
Hmm.
And for that, I am very grateful that I did make the right decisions.
It's amazing. It's worked out for you. Obviously, you've got, I mean, these beautiful books on the shelf behind you,
So
and
cool.
I mean, I think we are all grateful you did. I know I've been enjoying Stone and Sky, and yeah, that's great, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
Seriously, hey, honestly, you and everybody else I've met because of this journey has been so great. Like it's so
it's so
fun.
cool.
Like
Yeah,
I just would have never met all of you awesome people like
absolutely. Yeah,
if I never made that decision, And
right.
so it's just wild to think, especially because we've actually gotten to meet in person now,
Yeah,
and this
which
year
has been
are
great.
we hanging out more this year or what? Are
I
you
don't know
not
if
gonna
I'm gonna
make it?
make it, but
Oh,
we'll
okay.
see.
We'll figure something
We'll
out.
see. Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
figure something out.
it's
We'll get some more
it's
time
not
together.
it's yeah it's not out of the question, but it's not for sure yet. So we'll
Fair enough.
yeah.
Fair enough. But I mean, it's that kind of thing. Like all the different people that we get to meet, and I love that you're playing with a book right now. That you have a book coming out right now where you kind of get to play with this weird multiverse. Like,
Hmm.
oh, what if we make all these different decisions? And
Yeah,
I love the fact that you're getting to play with a bartender who's going to get to meet all these unique people and characters because dude, that's what we've done. Like we've made the decision to
that's true.
come out into this multiverse world
Yeah,
where there's
right.
so many different genres and things and get to meet all these people. I think it's going to be I can't wait, bro. I am so excited.
I'm
If you guys
excited too,
haven't
man.
backed this Kickstarter, get to it. Go do it. That's the sponsor of this one. So go and do it.
That's
uh,
awesome, man. Thank you so much, Zach. I won't keep you here any longer. But if our listeners, if our watchers have not already, please go check out Stone and Sky and the rest of the Stone and Sky series. The especially the, I mean, we didn't even get to talk about the audiobook. Your
oh yeah,
narrator is amazing, and you know,
incredible. Yeah.
it's like it's like Neil Gaiman is reading me Stone and Sky. It's like the same timbre of voice, the same
Yeah.
accent. It's incredible. So if
He's,
you
I mean, phenomenal. And that's
yeah,
another thing, man. Going and finding these talented people to work with that like you just would never get to work with, and it's just the
Yeah.
coolest. It's the coolest, man.
Yeah, it's great. Cool. Did you have something?
And no,
Anything
I was
else you
gonna
didn't get to talk
say,
about?
it's great, dude. Like,
Yeah,
and if you guys aren't ready to like pull the trigger and go and buy all the books, I totally understand. Go get the free stuff if you want.
absolutely. Yeah.
Freefantasyfiction.com, super easy to find. Freefantasyfiction.com. It's alliteration. It's so much fun.
Very cool. Cool. Thank you, Zach. I hope that yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening and good luck on your launch next week.
Awesome, bro. I can't wait. Good luck on the rest of that Kickstarter, dude. It's
Thank
gonna be awesome.
thank you.
I
It's
see
been
I
great
see
so
you hitting
far.
those stretch goals, dude.
It's
I
been
see you
unreal.
hitting them.
It has blown through all of my expectations.
I know, right?
All right. All right. Have a
All
good
right.
night, guys.
I'll chat you up later.
Yeah.
Later, guys.